Freda, I know you get away with this on other shows, but you're not talking that nonsense on my show. That is actually a libel. She's not. I know Kellie-Jay Keen. Freda, you're being rude to me and you're libeling a former guest on my show.
No, I'm not.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Julian Discourse. When progressive activists realize they are losing a debate, they abandon logic and resort to lazy, defamatory insults. In this explosive clip, Talk TV host Julia Hartley-Brewer shuts down activist Freda Wallace for running this exact playbook. When Wallace attempts to casually label women's rights campaigners as far-right, Julia instantly calls out the libelous lies on live television. Hit subscribe and let's watch this.
First up, though, let's talk about, well, a country that would like to be an independent republic, and that is Scotland. And the SNP-led Scottish Government confirmed yesterday they will launch a legal challenge against the bloc put on their plans for gender self-ID reforms. Rishi Sunak and his Scottish Secretary decided to block that change in the law on the basis that actually it was outside of the remit of the Scottish Government's powers, but also that it would basically come up against UK-wide equality laws in terms of the impact on women's and girls' rights and safety. Let's talk about this with Freda Wallace. She's a trans woman and works for the LGBT Foundation in Manchester and is host of the Gender Nebulous podcast. Good morning to you, Freda.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. These gender self-ID reforms, very controversial in Scotland, seen as being part of the reason why Nicola Sturgeon ended up leaving as First Minister, as one of the straws that broke the camel's back. Why do you think Humza Yousaf is confirming that he's going to launch a legal action to try and push this through?
I think it's controversial in Scotland because this was overwhelmingly voted for by a cross-party majority. And what you're seeing here realistically is a meddling of Westminster lobby groups in Scottish politics. This bit of legislation has never been so, there's never been a piece of legislation so heavily fought over. And you have to question why that is. You know, there's so many different factors to this. I don't think this is why Sturgeon left. I think there might be something else going on there. You
say it's not controversial in Scotland. It is. The vast majority, polling has shown very clearly, over 2/3 of Scottish people don't support this. Now, politicians might well support it in Parliament. Labour voted for this, the Greens, SNP, some other parties. But Lib Dems, lots of support in Parliament, but it hasn't got the support of the Scottish people, including an awful lot of SNP members.
Well, there might be some SNP members, like what's she called, Cherry? I forgot, Joanna Cherry. But they're very much linked to the lobby groups I just mentioned.
What lobby groups?
Well, we're talking about For Women Scotland. We're talking about the LGBT Alliance.
Groups representing women. How awful!
Well, no, they represent Westminster, Julia. 7 independent Scottish women's groups support self-ID, and they wrote to the Scottish Parliament to express that. We cannot allow.
But can you address? No, Freda, address the question I actually asked you. You said it's not controversial in Scotland because people support it, because you pointed to politicians voting for it. I pointed out the Scottish people don't. The polling is very consistent. The Scottish people don't support this.
Well, it depends who's doing the polling, doesn't it, Julia?
It does.
It does. It really does. And I'll tell you something.
There are no polls saying that the Scottish people support this.
Well, I'm just going to say, we can't allow the lives of trans people to be used as a pawn in a Westminster battle. We are, Julia. And you platform people on this programme like Kellie-Jay Keen are very much linked to far-right nationalist groups.
Freda, I know you get away with this on other shows, but you're not talking that nonsense on my show. That is actually a libel. She's not. I know Kellie-Jay Keen.
She is. Absolutely.
I platform her because she is a woman who's campaigned for women's safety.
Julia, stop lying. Please stop lying.
Freda, you're being rude to me and you're libeling a former guest on my show.
No, I'm not.
I know you get away with this sort of bullying on other shows, but it doesn't fly with me.
When you have people like Lee Anderson suddenly supporting women's rights, you know there's something fishy going on in Westminster. Let's be realistic about this.
Again, another absurd statement. The key thing here is gender self-ID. Any man or woman being able to say that they are living in they are now a different gender and having that legally recognised. That doesn't expose men to risks, but it does expose women to risks. We know with men who are men who are rapists. We've seen Isla Bryson and other cases who can then, after the point at which they're charged or convicted, say, oh, actually, I'm a woman, and get put into a women's prison. That was something that the Scottish gender self-ID law would allow. It's been happening in England as well. Some of the Humza Yousaf and indeed Nicola Sturgeon endorsed happening until there was a public outcry and they had to backtrack. At the end of the day, as much as I don't want trans people to have to go through any more difficulties in their lives than they already are going through, because I think it's a very difficult thing to be in that situation. When rights for trans people trample on the rights and safety of women and girls, we have a right to speak out, don't we?
Well, all you have to do there is do a risk assessment, Julian. 18 other countries that have self-ID laws with no issues, most recently Spain and Finland, they have these laws of self-ID. There's no issues
There's
at all.
no issue with men being rapists being put into prisons with women.
Well, that's not what we're discussing. But don't go to extremes.
We're
not going to those extremes, Julia.
Those extremes, they were 3 in 1 week,
Okay, can I just speak to that a little bit? Because when you go to extremes, you don't win the argument. When you start talking about immigrants as having diseases, we know where that's going.
What happened then? Where did that get thrown in? Talk about the subject in hand, Freda.
Why don't you speak to Brendan O'Neill again and have a word with him, and he'll tell you.
Talk about the subject. I love the fact you're just deflecting to why don't you just call everyone a Nazi in the next few minutes? We'll have done. I'll have the full. We'll have the full packet of insults.
Is that an admission
I asked you a question, and you're deliberately. No, Freda. Do you know what? I'm sure these things. Interviews like this do really well online because, people are battling. But yes, I think it's really boring. I'd much rather have a sensible conversation about where trans rights clash with women's rights.
You've had no sensible discussions on trans issues. And all I can tell you is young trans people that I know feel like they're being talked about a lot and we're not being represented properly. And if I can't have a conversation with you factually, then...
No, apparently you can't.
Well, I have done, and I've told you some facts. Now, follow Trans Safety Network, follow my Twitter, and you will understand where this is coming from.
Oh, I think I've got better things to do than follow you on Twitter, Freda. Again, I would have wasted so much time. We could have had a useful conversation, but if you don't...
You know, there is nothing more revealing than watching a progressive activist argument completely collapse on live television. When Freda Wallace sat in that studio, she didn't have a single coherent defense for the Scottish gender self-ID laws. So, she deployed the ultimate progressive panic button. She started throwing around baseless, libelous accusations, casually labeling women's rights campaigners like Kellie-Jay Keen far-right. This is the exact playbook the modern left uses when they run out of facts. They assume that if they scream bigot loudly enough, you will simply back down out of fear. But Julia Hartley-Brewer didn't back down. She completely shut it down. To understand why activists are so desperate to deflect from this conversation today in 2026, you have to look at the undeniable disaster of the Scottish gender self-ID agenda. In December 2022, Nicola Sturgeon's SNP rammed through the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, allowing anyone to legally change their gender purely through self-declaration. It was a direct threat to the safety and privacy of biological women. The backlash was so fierce that in January 2023, the UK government stepped in and blocked the legislation, correctly pointing out that it fundamentally undermined the UK-wide Equality Act. The absolute insanity of the progressive policy was exposed just weeks later during the Isla Bryson scandal, when a convicted double rapist was initially sent to a female prison in Scotland simply by claiming to be a woman. The resulting public outrage was massive and ultimately played a major role in forcing Sturgeon's resignation. When activists like Wallace try to label everyday people defending women's spaces as far-right, they aren't making an argument. They are demanding submission. Julia Hartley-Brewer gave a masterclass on how we must respond. You do not coddle these lies, you expose the bullying and state the facts. Thank you for watching Julian Discourse. If you refuse to let the establishment gaslight you about biological reality, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.